Be seated, please. Good morning. Good morning. That's more for me than you. It's a little disconcerting to stand up and preach and have had to just have 2 glucose tablets and try to remember something you studied for 2 weeks. So give a minute and the sugar will kick in and I'll have a sweet sermon for you. How's that? Just let my brain get going a little bit. Those of you that are diabetic and have had crashes understand that. You think I'd learn to take less insulin on Sunday mornings. You need to be able to process a little bit better. I hope that you wrote your sermon this week. I know some of you worked on it. Sandra Husky was faithful to work on her sermon. Had a comment from a couple of you. I asked you to write a Christmas sermon out of Matthew chapter 16. And I hope that you process through that in your mind. I don't want to hear any of them because they might be better than my sermon, so I just need to be sure that you did process through that and think through that a bit. And maybe it's a strange place to try to pull Christmas. I don't think so. And I pray that it will work for God, for His glory, and for your good this morning. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. She died on Christmas Eve, 11:40 in the evening. 28 years ago this Wednesday, she was my mom. Oh, a bummer, she died on Christmas Eve. No, she loved Christmas. She absolutely loved it. She helped me sing the songs. She helped me glue together construction paper, string popcorn. I'll tell my age there. Put it on the tree. Our stockings always had a piece of fruit, citrus if she could get it, because we didn't have citrus fruit all the time back then, and some nuts. I was partial to peanuts and pecans. Sometimes there wasn't much else in the stocking. And sometimes the stocking was the only gift you got. But I never felt slighted at Christmas because she lived it, owned it. And this week, as I studied this lesson, how appropriate I thought that it was that she died on Christmas Eve at 11:40. What that conveys, what that means. When you think about Christmas, have you ever thought about whether Jesus had any joy at Christmas time? This passage in Hebrews takes us and reminds us that for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and is sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. The joy set before him. And whether the joy of Christmas was something different for Jesus than it is for us. I don't think like us, he didn't sit there and contemplate how wonderful it was to be born. Most of you don't think about that of your own life. You don't stop and celebrate, we may have a birthday. But that's not where we live. We live in the moment. We live in the present. And so Jesus has all of this declared about him. When we think about Christmas and Noel and the songs that we sing, and we think about the naming of Jesus. Matthew 1 says, you'll call his name Jesus. He will be Emmanuel. He's going to be God with us. And the identity of this baby, he will be the sunrise from on high that visits us. He's going to be the one that the virgin bears. He's going to be this consolation of Israel that Ned read about. One of my favorite stories. Jesus shows up for his naming ceremony, his purification at the temple, and Simeon holds him in his arms, and the old man Simeon had been going around grabbing every baby he could because the Spirit had told him that he couldn't die until he saw the consolation of Israel. Consolation of Israel. I always think about the Green Mile now that I've seen that movie. The guy at the end of it, that all of his friends have died, the generation of 2 generations, and he's waiting, when am I going to get to go? And Simeon sits there, and he's been told, you can't die until you see the consolation of Israel. So every baby that comes in the temple, Simeon is holding them, looking at them. And when Jesus shows up, Jesus says, now, Lord, you can let me die, because I have seen the consolation of Israel. And then Anna says that everyone was looking for the redemption of Jerusalem is blessed in this child that Simeon is holding, that she sees. The King of Kings, the Prince of Peace, all the names that are given to Jesus in the nativity sections. But 30 years later, John the Baptist preaches about who Jesus is. He's on his way. He's the Messiah. And then God shows up at his baptism and says, this is my beloved Son. So when he's 30 years old, he has this declaration about him. Who are you going to be? What are you going to make of yourself? And it's one thing to be the infant that is called the King. But it's another to be the 30-year-old that's called the Son of God, my beloved. By the time we get to Matthew chapter 16, Jesus is 33. Anyone here 33 years old? Give me a hand. Oh, there's the one. All right, way to go, Kaylor. Kaylor's only 30-year-old we have, 33-year-old we have. Think about that. Here I am, 33. That's my station in life. It's time to figure out who I'm going to be and what I'm going to do. But by now, no one is oohing and ogling in the cradle. There are no babies leaping in the wombs. By now, there's conflict and tension. Oh, sure, you claim to be the Son of God. You are the Son of God. Now, in the last chapter, remember that we have a foreign woman who stands in the region of Tyre and Sidon and says, you are the Lord, the Son of David. I know who you are. But a foreign woman gets it, and his religious people at home don't understand who he is. It can sort of be like today, where a lot of people think about Christmas this week, but they really have no clue about who Jesus is. And they really aren't too interested in submitting to the will of God in Jesus Christ. They're much more interested in seeing grandparents or getting gifts, of taking trips and having time off work. And it's very little about acknowledging that we believe Jesus is who he says he is. But that's the lesson that comes to us in Matthew chapter 16, where we do have the joy of Jesus. The Pharisees are there and they want a sign. Can you imagine being Jesus in verse 1? Pharisees, Sadducees came up testing Jesus. They asked him to show them a sign from heaven. Just show us a sign. Oh, man, every day I turn around and somebody wants another sign. It's like Doug said, I fed the 5,000, I fed the 4,000. I've healed every leper that came to me. I've healed all the lame that are coming. I can't show more signs than I'm showing, but these people, they didn't show up to find a Messiah. They showed up to give Jesus a test. And Jesus says, I'm not taking any more tests. No sign is going to be given. Y'all are smart enough to look at the heavens and see when the sky is red and know what the weather's going to be tomorrow. Or wake up in the morning and see the color of the sky and you know what it's going to be like today. But y'all aren't, well, here's how he says it in the text. He says in the end of verse 3, do you know how to discern the appearance of the sky but cannot discern the signs of the times? An evil and adulterous generation seeks after signs, and a sign will not be given it except the sign of Jonah. He left them and went away. The sign of Jonah. You know what the sign of Jonah was? I don't think it's only that he's in the belly of the whale for those 3 days. I think it is the fact that he goes and preaches to the outsiders and they repent immediately. The only sign y'all are going to get is the outsiders get it and y'all are missing it. That's the sign that you're going to miss. You came with expectations. There was something else on the horizon. God was doing something else. So watch out for the leaven of the Pharisees and the scribes. Be careful of what they're teaching you. They're teaching you not to believe in the Messiah. They're teaching you to test God rather than believe in God. Don't believe everything about Christmas that you hear this week. People are trying to teach you all sorts of things. Satan's trying to distract you with all sorts of things that really have no place in the Scripture and don't mean anything at all. He says, no, if we're going to talk about the birth of Jesus, let's do it Jesus' way. Then I like what Doug did with the bread in verse 7. Disciples coming to the other side. We didn't bring any bread. We weren't prepared. He said, beware of the teaching of the scribes and the Pharisees. Then in verse 13, now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples the real Christmas question. Who do people say that I am? That's the real Christmas question, isn't it? Who do people say that I am? Go ahead, Peter. That's what I want to know. What's the word on the street? If Jesus showed up in America today and asked the run-of-the-mill people, who do people say that I am? Oh, you're a beautiful baby that was born long ago. Who do people say that I am now? The baby's grown up. His own mother thinks he's beside himself. His brothers have been to collect him. He's questioned by all the religious authorities. Who do people say that I am? Well, King Herod had just said he was John the Baptist, risen from the dead, right? That was the last lesson. Oh, it must be John the Baptist. He came back from the dead. And so the disciples begin to report. Can you imagine sort of being in a small rabbinical school and the rabbi says, all right, here's your test for the day. Who do people say that I am? Well, some people say you're John the Baptist. And some people say that you're Elijah. And some people say you're Jeremiah. Some people say you're one of the prophets. Those are great questions for a pop quiz. It's a great pop quiz answer, right? And Jesus is just throwing softballs to his class. Who do people say that I am? You can say nearly anything and think somebody said it, right? Who do people say that I am? I mean, what color green is this? And that's a great question, right? There's no wrong answer to that. Some people can't even see the color green, right? There's no wrong answer. Then he says this, though. Who do you say that I am? That's the real Christmas question. Who do you say that I am? When you come down to a day of thinking about Jesus coming into the world, and us deciding as a culture that we need to mark that day and remember that day. We don't usually sit around on Christmas Eve and read this story. We read the birth narrative. We don't usually sit around and ask our grandkids, who do you say Jesus is? Maybe that's a better exercise for this year. Who do you say that Jesus is? Where do you stand on it? Peter gets an A, right? Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Nailed it. Got it. And he's right. He's dead on. And Jesus is so proud of him. And Jesus says, you didn't figure that out. God gave that to you. Flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven, he is the one who has revealed my true nature to you, who I really am. And you are saying the right things. Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And that's the real question of Christmas. Who do we believe Jesus is? And do we really believe that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God, the God who is alive? And how does that change our world? The Lord's Supper changes our world each week. It's the declaration that we believe Jesus. And Jesus is walking that middle line now, right? I did not know that Billy Graham had preached a sermon from the cradle to the cross until I started looking for an image to put on the screen today. And I typed in an image. I wanted a cradle and a cross and an empty tomb. I'm really into this AI stuff. I don't know if y'all have heard of that. I didn't find a picture I could use. But I did learn that Billy Graham had actually preached that sermon. But that is the image that was driving. Jesus is able to see the cross from the cradle. He's able to see what's on the horizon from the very beginning. Before he leaves heaven and comes into this world, he empties himself and takes on the form of a man and born in appearance as a man. That's the humiliation of God becoming birthed through the canal of Mary. And Jesus shows up in our world. God comes because he has humbled himself. But he humbled himself for a purpose, to the point of death, even death on the cross. Before he left heaven, he saw the cross. And when he's in the cradle, I don't know cognitively what he sees, but he sees the cross. And when he asks Peter, who do people say that I am? Thou art the Christ, of the Son of the living God. He sees the cross. He didn't see the manger. He's looking back. Every birth comes with the promise of death since the fall. Have you thought of that? Every birth comes with the promise of death. It's on its way. It's coming for each of us. Every second we get nearer. Don't freak out on me, but think about that for a moment. Every second we get nearer. Every birth comes with the promise of death. And God willing, you'll live long enough to cry for death and long for it. That'll be your passion. But it's not about bread. It's not about death. Well, it's not about your body dying. He warned the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ in verse 20. Verse 21. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised up on the third day. Now he's looking Peter in the eye. Now he's saying, I've got to go to Jerusalem. The elders, the chief priests, the scribes, I'm going to suffer many things from their hand, and I'm going to be killed. I saw the death from the cradle. I'm going to be raised up on the third day. It's always one of those amazing things that we are so finite in our thinking that we're always looking forward to the cross. And Jesus was never looking forward to the cross. He was always looking forward through the cross and be raised on the third day. And Christmas isn't about Jesus being born or Jesus dying. It's about the resurrection of Jesus. It's about the life that comes back to him. Now, understand the birth and the death are necessary for the resurrection to occur, but he's trying to let us understand that the death of Christmas is what's really important. That's what's vital. And that's what's critical for you today. It's the death of Christmas. Because we put our faith in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. Well, the next verse, Peter gets an F. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord. This shall never happen to you. How many of you want to look Jesus in the eye and say, wrong? All right, you got it all wrong, Jesus. Peter's been living with Jesus. Peter just got an A on the big question, right? And now he fails. Peter is us. Highs and lows. One moment, we're right there on top. Our faith is really good. We got everything focused where it needs to be. We're not distracted by the commercialism. We're not upset by the relationships that we have to finagle at Christmas. We're all focused on who Jesus is and what Jesus is about. And then suddenly, someone says, oh, Aunt Bertha's coming. And your world is thrown apart, right? Just because Aunt Bertha decides to come. Well, she has nothing to do with the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. She can't fix it. She can't change it. Hopefully she believes it. And if she does, rejoice. Just rejoice. Because Jesus is wanting us to understand that in the manger there was a cross and an empty tomb. In verse 23, here's what Jesus says to Peter. He turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you're not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's. Whatever you do this week, with all the people you associate with, set your mind on the things of God, the important stuff. Let everything else go. Stay in the deep material. Set your mind on the things of God. Realize that it's about the birth and the death and the burial and the resurrection of Jesus, and that's what's more important than anything else. I determined to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. I make known to you the gospel. And he just keeps on pounding with the good news, which I preached to you, which you believed. All those by which also you're saved, 1 Corinthians 15 reminds us. He comes to this point and be raised up on the third day. But now it gets personal. And you always wonder why this section comes right now until you put it together. Verse 24, Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone wishes to come after me, where's he going? I'm going to be raised from the dead. That's what he's talking about. It's not just walking on the world. It's not just acting like a disciple. He had just said that he was going to be raised from the dead. If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. It was okay for my mom to die on Christmas Eve because she had already experienced the death of Christmas in her life. She had already denied herself, taken up her cross, and was following him. I don't know what you think about Christmas. It's not a biblical word. We've come up with a term to describe what we're doing. We've embraced it on a worldly level, and we've embraced it on a religious level. But what it is about is denying ourselves. Jesus denies himself, takes up his cross, and goes home. He says, if anyone would follow me, deny yourself, take up your cross. There would be a sense in which it would be easier to be a martyr than a Christian, right? The martyr gets to die for his faith. And there's no more temptation, no more time. He's just died in his faith. He's finished. Going home. Jesus has asked of you that you become a living sacrifice, that you live your faith, that Christmas becomes something that drives you each day, and that you live out that faith in the midst of a lost and dying world, shining the light of the gospel so that others can believe that Jesus was born, that he was killed, that he was buried, that he was raised, and that he ascended to the right hand of God. Who, for the joy set before him. I hope you have a lot of joy at Christmas. I hope none of your joy is limited to the things of what you get or the traditions of your family, unless they are tied to your faith. I hope your joy is tied to taking up your cross and following him. Because that's the only conviction that matters. Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? What will a man give in exchange for his soul? The Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then repay every man according to his deeds. Therefore I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. All those people in the first part of the chapter who asked for a sign, just show us one more sign. Then we'll believe. One more and we'll get on board. He says, no, I'm finished. I'm going to come with my angels. And I want you to be one of those who have believed in the cross. Here's your take home this morning. And I do hope you have a great Merry Christmas. And I do hope this is the most important thing. Have you decided to follow Jesus from the cradle to the cross today? Deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow him. Then it comes into focus. Everything makes sense. And much of the stuff that would disturb us this week won't bother us at all if this is true. And if this is not true, then you ought to be violently disturbed all week long. I pray you have no rest until you wrestle with that question and come to that decision. That I love Jesus in the manger, but I'm going to follow him through the cross. Through the cross. So that I may be raised up with him and seated with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. It was never about your physical death. It was about your submission to denying yourself. Have you decided to deny yourself and follow Jesus today? What a great way to have a holiday week by making that decision. By giving everyone here something to celebrate. By having that emotion in your heart of celebrating that I am alive and will never die. That's the promise of Christmas. I live by the power of the manger and the cross and the empty tomb. Do you live today? Are you dead in your trespasses and sins? Please come if you are, as together we stand and sing.